Let's start with something to reflect on. What's one way you can create space for God to refresh your soul this week? Maybe you've felt weary lately or distant, maybe even a bit dry in your spirit. Perhaps you've just been pouring out endlessly, or there's this quiet numbness, despite your best intentions. It's a feeling of spiritual exhaustion that's, well, it's far more common than you might think. Today, we're exploring a really profound truth about finding rest, finding renewal, when your spirit feels utterly depleted. It's about
Mhm.
how the soul can actually be restored, how it can be guided back to peace and vitality.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here, I think, is how often we mistake spiritual health for just constant activity, always doing more. We're going to unpack a different path today, maybe a gentler one.
Yeah.
It focuses more on replenishment, on a deeper connection, rather than just adding more things to the list.
Okay, let's try and unpack this feeling we're calling spiritual burnout. Because it's not just physical tiredness, is it? It's when your faith itself feels weary, distant, dry. How does that kind of exhaustion even, how does it sneak in?
Well, it's insidious, isn't it? It often creeps in really subtly, maybe through overcommitment, even to good things, right? Or just constantly giving of yourself without really pausing to refill the tank, so to speak. Sometimes it's just a feeling of spiritual numbness. You're going through the motions, your intentions are good, but inside, it's quiet, flat. You might find yourself pouring into others, leading, serving, but you realize, maybe suddenly, that you're running on empty yourself.
Right, running on fumes.
Exactly. And this quiet depletion, it often goes unnoticed until it hits a kind of critical point.
So here's where it gets really interesting, I think, incredibly hopeful too. The central idea for us today comes from Psalm 23, verse 3. He restores my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. What does that phrase, he restores my soul, what does that really mean for someone who feels completely drained?
hmm This verse it's foundational. It highlights that the divine desire isn't to push us harder when we're already depleted. Instead, it's this gentle leading back to peace, back to rest, back to restoration. It's actually a really comforting reminder, isn't it, that restoration is fundamentally a divine act. It's not solely our burden to somehow fix ourselves.
So we don't have to muscle through it on our own strength.
Precisely. Often we think we need to do something huge to earn our way back, but this points to a different source of healing altogether.
Okay, so the shepherd analogy woven through that psalm is really key here then.
Absolutely.
But sometimes that image, shepherd, it might bring up ideas of discipline, maybe even strictness for some people. How does this wisdom sort of reframe that, emphasizing guidance and care over just effort?
That's a great point. Because a shepherd, a good shepherd, doesn't drive the flock relentlessly until they collapse, right? A shepherd leads, gently, leads them specifically to places of rest and nourishment, the green pastures, the still waters. So this imagery, it really challenges some common misconceptions about spiritual discipline. It's not about gritting your teeth and doing more spiritual tasks. It's about uh, discerning guidance and tender care. The shepherd knows when the flock needs replenishment, not just pushing forward. It's a relationship, really. Trust, provision, not performance.
That leads perfectly into this distinction that really stood out for us. Spiritual health isn't about doing more. It's about abiding deeper. That phrase really sticks. What does abiding deeper actually look like in practice? And why is that distinction so crucial for restoration?
Yeah, this is central, I think. Doing more well, that often just implies increasing external actions, more religious tasks, more obligations, adding to the list, which ironically can actually contribute to the burnout we're talking about.
Right, like trying to fix the problem by doing more of what might be causing it.
Yeah, exactly. Like trying to fill a leaky bucket by just pouring water in faster without actually fixing the leak. You're just creating more activity, not real nourishment. Abiding deeper, on the other hand, that's about cultivating a profound, intimate relationship.
Mm.
It's about shifting the focus from outward performance to inner presence, to listening, to nurturing that internal connection. True spiritual well-being, the kind that sustains you, it comes from that quality of connection,
Mm.
being rooted, nourished from within.
It sounds like it's not about zero effort, but maybe a different kind of effort. Intentionality, slowness, maybe?
Absolutely. It's about discerning what truly replenishes you versus what just depletes you further, even if it looks spiritual.
Mm.
And this brings up what you might call the paradox of rest.
Mm.
In our world, busyness is valued, right?
Yeah.
Visible output. So true rest, that deep soul-level replenishment, it can feel, well, unproductive, even lazy sometimes. But this wisdom shows time and again that this deep rest is actually the engine of sustained spiritual vitality. Without it, the well just runs dry. It's countercultural, but really liberating.
Okay, let's make this really practical. Let's look at some examples. There was a youth pastor in Atlanta, reached a critical point, total spiritual exhaustion. He described it as pouring into others while running on empty himself. Feeling numb, not just tired, but hollow.
That sounds familiar for many, I suspect.
So what did he do? He made a really brave decision, actually. He stepped away from ministry entirely for 3 months. Imagine how hard that must have been, the fear, maybe the feeling of failure. But during that break, he didn't start some intense new spiritual boot camp. He rediscovered simple things: quiet walks, unhurried prayer, like real conversation, not a list, journaling just to process, not to produce insights. And in that quiet space, he had this aha moment. He said, I remembered why I loved Jesus in the first place. It wasn't about the work. It was about the relationship. That's a huge shift, isn't it? From performance back to presence.
It really is. And that story, it just underscores the importance of intentionally disconnecting from the demands, from the performance aspect, and patiently reconnecting with the core of your faith. It shows that sometimes the most active thing, the most effective thing we can do for our soul is actually to step back, to consciously create that space for soul care. It takes real courage in our culture.
Yeah, it really does. Then there's another story, just as powerful. A young mother in the Midwest. She hadn't been to church in over a year. Just overwhelmed, feeling like she couldn't measure up, convinced she'd fallen too far behind. Then she stumbled on a friend's online devotional, almost accidentally, and she braced herself, expected to feel, well, guilt, shame.
Yeah, that expectation is strong sometimes.
But instead, she found grace. The message that sparked healing for her was incredibly simple, but it just broke through. It was, God wasn't disappointed in me, he just missed me. Wow. That thought, he just missed me, it completely disarmed her. It didn't demand anything, it just invited. That shift from expected condemnation to just longing, it sparked a genuine desire in her to reconnect.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, that shift from guilt to grace is so significant. We often project our own judgments onto God, don't we? Expecting condemnation for our failures or absences. But this story points to God's character, one of longing for connection, of unconditional acceptance, especially when we're weary, when we feel we've wandered off. That grace, that simple invitation, that's what allows the healing to actually begin. It removes the barrier of shame, invites a gentle return.
It's not about earning your way back.
Not at all. It's about being welcomed back.
And these stories, they really illustrate that spiritual restoration isn't some quick fix. It's not rushed. The wisdom we've been looking at highlights this again and again. He doesn't rush the process. He walks with you in it.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful reminder, isn't it, that you're never too far gone, never too worn out. The divine is still in the business of restoring souls.
Absolutely. And that patience, it isn't passive waiting. It's active. It's tender, steadfast. Think of it like a gardener tending a plant back to health. They know rushing it, forcing the bloom, actually harms it. This divine patience, it means even when we feel totally depleted, like we have nothing left, there's this steady presence committed to our renewal. Without judgment for our pace or where we are, that understanding, it can be such a source of comfort, of real hope.
Letting go of the need to force it. Just allowing ourselves to be led.
Exactly. Trusting the process. Trusting the shepherd.
So, as we bring our reflections to a close today, the core message is this. Spiritual health isn't about an endless sprint. It's not about constantly pouring out until you're empty. It's fundamentally about finding true peace, finding deep replenishment. It's about being gently led, not driven, back to a place of rest. Restoration. We started with a question, and it feels right to end with it too. Just let it sit with you for a moment. What's one way, maybe even a small way, you can create space for God to refresh your soul this week?